Men report having real difficulty in knowing the idea that same-sex sex or same-sex attraction is negative and not okay. Young boys in the schoolyard and know, that one of the negative terms and negative experiences are reported around same-sex sex with other guys, and they have very negative terms. So they know not to speak about sex. They know that if there's been a same-sex contact, that's considered not okay, and that if they mention they've been participated or they've been involved in any activity, and that's not recognizing. That's recognizing that the activity is abusive. But for those men, working that out is quite a challenge when all you have is the information that a 12-year-old has around sex and sex in their own experience. So a lot of those guys report really struggling and recognizing that for them to speak up about sex could produce real problems for them, so they often keep very, very quiet. But there's also the question that guys have, where it's nicely articulated here. So it makes you wonder, when you're being raped, some guy just had anal sex with me. Who am I? Am I gay or am I hetero? You wonder. Those men, for men, this is a real struggle. It's not the same experience what we're hearing from in relation to women. They're trying to work out their sexuality in relation to the experience of sexual abuse, and in doing that, because they have nobody to talk to about the experience they've had, or very reluctant to speak because of their fear about that they will be treated differently or abused further, they're just trying to work out their own sexual identity through the lens of having an experience of sexual abuse, and so that's really, really challenging. And they're very aware sometimes that there's this question that they might be really gay, but they just don't know it, that the man abusing them might know they're gay, or that they don't know it. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that context a bit later on. So that's that's really a challenge for guys around sexual abuse. It's also the added difficulty is that they had a physiological response, or they became aroused at some point during the sexual experience. Then this adds to the sense of confusion and makes them even more reluctant to speak about what's happened for them. So this question around men developing erections and ejaculating at the time of abuse, this is one that really does produce extra confusion for guys. Now, I'm not saying that women don't also experience confusion where it's a very sexualized experience, also might experience orgasm or some arousal at the time. But for men, this links in further with this idea that I'm gay and might not mind it. Because the experience, the erection or erection is very linked with the idea of arousal and sexual attraction. In talking with men around sexual abuse, it's really important that any counsellor, any worker speaks with them around or checks in whether they became aroused or developed an erection at the time of abuse. It's very important to explain that pressure on the prostate can produce an erection and cause ejaculation. It's very important to talk through how the person who was abusing them might have touched them or stimulated them, or sort out that they develop an erection. Now, there'll be many reasons for doing this. Sometimes the person abusing will do this as they know that this is something that will keep the young person or the boy quiet. However, it's also the fact is sometimes people who are abusing will actually see this as a mutual sexual encounter, and they will do this in a way that supports their belief and sees this as a sign that they're engaged in a mutual sexual encounter, and so in a sense it provides them with some support for themselves, with a sense of identity for themselves, that they're not being abusive but they're engaging in a mutual act. What we have to watch out for as well is this idea that our bodies will tell the truth of ourselves. That this erection automatically signals desire, that there's this inner true self, or this hidden latent desire that will become known. Now, I'll just give a little example about this from a court case which occurred in the UK in 1996. the reason why this is important, and it's important for anybody working in this area, and also for those working in the legal context and the court context, is that in rape offences there's actually a defence called mistake of fact, and it comes from a case in the UK called Regina versus Morgan, where when somebody's charged with rape, if they can show that it was reasonable for them to believe that this person was consenting, then they can be found not guilty. In this case, you see a line of questioning by DC of T. This is T. Tony, somebody who was sexually abused in a prison context. So I'll read this. DC says, one thing you've not told the jury yet is what you did right at the beginning of this incident. What do you mean? T said. You got an erection right at the beginning, did you not? T said, no, I didn't get an erection right at the beginning. DC, when did you first get an erection? T, when you started playing with me. DC, this is what you say, is it? Yeah, this is what I say, and this is what is the truth. DC, all right, so you say stop according to you. T, yeah. DC, he plays with your penis and you get an erection, yes? T, yeah. DT, although you are scared, you cannot say anything, you get an erection, yes. DT, not a sort of half-hearted erection, a full-blown one, no doubt. T, yeah, I suppose so. DT, well, you were there. Now, this case was actually thrown out because the judge couldn't believe that this person participated or was not consenting to this sexual act because he developed an erection. So it's really, really important that anybody who's considering prosecution, or for those who are involved in prosecutions, to make sure there's evidence from a urologist or somebody with experience that recognizes that erections can occur out of fear or for a multiple of reasons. And also to make sure that for those people working, sometimes it may be a counsellor may not be the best person to explain this. You might want to go to a doctor or somebody else who might be able to help. But talking about this is really important around guys because it produces considerable confusion. This confusion is no less great for men who've experienced, who are same-sex attracted. They might be struggling with questions like, did the sexual assault make me gay? Was I sexually assaulted because I'm gay? If I come forward, will I be treated differently and not believed because I'm gay? These are very difficult questions when the person who's asking them is not talking to anybody else and they're trying to work this out for themselves. And all they have is the information of their experiences and their culture, which doesn't really provide much support or assistance for same-sex attracted men. In relation to did the sexual assault make me gay, it's really important to talk through with someone about their affections on what they were interested in when they first noticed their interest in same-sex and their partners or other males. There is no evidence that that sexual assault would make somebody gay. It's really interesting that we don't ask women who are sexually assaulted by males whether the sexual assault by males made them straight or heterosexual. Was I sexually assaulted because I am gay? Well, this is a difficult one. No, not necessarily you weren't, but it might be that some people sought out somebody who was vulnerable and somebody who was trying to work out their sexuality and took advantage of them and did sexually abuse them. And will I be treated differently believed because I'm gay? I'd like to think that there's some great work in this area now. Now I'm recognizing somebody's come along to speak. Is that somebody online? I can just hear another person coming in, I think. So that's really a struggle, and I think it's really important that workers spend time talking this through with guys. Especially, you recognise that for some young men, this gets very mixed up with coming out, especially for those men who haven't told anybody that they're same-sex attracted, and this is quite a challenge for those young men. So. I'll let people read this next quote. I'm not going to read it myself, but one of the things about this was from a submission in Queensland in relation to from a man who was raped twice, who felt he wasn't able to go forward to contact the police and to seek assistance because of homophobia. And recognizing that there's an interplay here between sexuality and sexual violence, where the men who are sexually assaulting, although identifying as straight, are actually committing the very act, as he says, performing the very act at the center of their reason for despising me. And so in thinking about sexual abuse of males, it's really important that we deal with the issue of homophobia, because where the sexual assault of females, the problem is clearly one of sexism and something that we need to deal with. In relation to sexual assault of males, the problem of homophobia is an absolute priority, and it's only when we start concentrating and starting to provide assistance and support to those men who've experienced sexual violence is that we start to think about and start to look at and deal with this problem of homophobia, which impacts on men whether they identify as straight or same-sex attracted. Has anybody got any questions here at this point? You can type the questions.